I'm sitting here in the 1592 room in Trinity College with Michael Geoghegan, former CEO of HSBC Global PLC. Michael, you're very welcome to Trinity.
Thanks.
We're looking forward to hearing from you later on this evening on your views in relation to Ireland Inc. and how it's perceived globally. But before we do that, for those of us who can't attend this evening from various parts of the globe, I'd like to pose a few questions to you, if I may.
Fire away.
I know that you described yourself as an entrepreneur, or more correctly, an intrapreneur, and that probably goes back to your days in the rag trade when you were involved in business here in Dublin. But how did you pursue that love of entrepreneurship within an organisation like the HSBC, given that it's Scottish and conservative by background?
Yeah, and imagine that, a young upstart Irishman turning up on the doorsteps all at the ripe old age of 19 and heading off to the Middle East when he was 20. You're right, I mean, I actually went into banking to see if I could borrow money from him, and I thought that would take me 2 years, and then I found an awfully bureaucratic system of business, and after I got married, it was a little bit wild playing rugby before that, but after that I decided I'd make this a career, but I wasn't prepared to take too long to become the chief executive, and I suppose I fought a bit from the inside. I think I might have resigned a couple of times as well, but that's all part and parcel of moving yourself up and challenging yourself, because it's quite easy in big companies. HSBC's got 300,000 employees in 83 countries. You could get very much submerged in a very domestic environment. So I moved. I lived in like 11 countries and 5 continents, and that got me the experience and got me to be bold enough. I think you also need to have an entrepreneurial background and feeling. I always had interests in the entrepreneurial world while still being with HSBC, and that gave me a little bit of financial comfort to be a little bit outspoken at times.
And in the current climate that we're in at the moment, indeed over the last 7 or 8 years, it's been a rocky ride in general for banks globally. But in fairness, under your tenure, and you're credited with it in the media, HSBC is fared very well. And I'm wondering, what do you put that down to vis-a-vis your peers? You know, what advantage did you have in a bank like HSBC?
Well, you touched on it earlier on in your first question. I mean, HSBC was formed in 1865 in Hong Kong and Shanghai. It was started by a group of Scotsmen. They were dour and mean, as we all know. But the fundamental rules they had were as follows. 1, you never lend unless you've got a deposit. So you take deposits first and then you lend. I can't tell you how many times across my time in HSBC, every month we had to prove that we had more core deposits. And when I say core deposits, current accounts balances were eliminated. And if we didn't have enough core deposits to match our assets, we weren't allowed to lend. So we never took from the wholesale market. The second thing I was always told is you can never have too much capital. Capital is your insurance policy against risk. And now today that seems pretty obvious, but it wasn't that obvious when I certainly had an activist shareholder inside HSBC telling me to drive the company at a faster pace and get a better return. And the third thing is you have nothing unless you have customers. You've got to know your customers. All this index of information. The Japanese taught me this back in the 80s. A balance sheet is only an accurate reflection at a point of time. It's a photograph at a point of time. It can be adjusted and moved within instants afterwards. If you know your customers and you understand their business and you grow with them, you'll be successful, because they will teach you as much about the world as you think you know about the world. Those are the 3 things I would say have made sure that HSBC hasn't got involved in this. And behind my desk before I retired, there was a lovely notice that it said, we owe the taxpayer nothing but respect. And that's an absolute reality. We've never taken a penny from any taxpayer in regard to building HSBC, making sure it was capital strong. And it continues to be that way today.
Well, you've worked in 11 countries, as you say, 5 continents. You've had vast experience in the world of banking over 38 years. And in that particular aspect, you would have seen many situations in many countries, but particularly perhaps in South America, where many of the countries there have faced significant banking crises over the last 20 years. And in the context of those banking crises and the experience that you've gained, what would you say to Irish politicians, bankers, and indeed businessmen who are aspiring to get us out of the mess that we're in? What message would you have for them?
Well, the first thing I'd say, and you know I'm outspoken, which I also said to a very senior official in the Bank of England when he said to me, I bet you've never seen a crisis like this. I said, yes, I've seen three of them. The Middle Eastern crisis when the Shah of Iran fell and the hostages were taken in Iran, the oil war developed after that, the Asian crisis, which I lived through, the Latin American crisis, which I lived through, the actual default of Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Venezuela, the debt equity swaps instructed by the IMF. I was in America in the savings and loans crisis in the 90s. And then what I find very hypocritical of the West is when they themselves say, well, we won't take the medicine that we should do. We told the Asians, we told the Latins, reform your banking system, consolidate your banking system. There's no money here to help you. And the very first thing the West did was create quantitative easing in the United States, in Europe. I think when the history books are written, that will turn out to be the worst decision ever done. Everybody said it was going to stop us going back into a deflationary environment. I think what it's done is just put off the inevitable. And the great credit to Ireland, and it's standing you right tonight, is you took the toughest decisions. For real estate prices to come down in this country by 60% was the right balloon to pop. You're adjusting your economy. People are working for less money. They are working to rebuild Ireland. It's an export-driven economy. It's got its head right up there high in Europe. And I think things like NAMA that's been developed in Ireland will be exported to the rest of Europe. Because boy, do they need to do what you do. My advice to the politicians is stay focused, communicate well, and look to the world, the new world, and not get yourself caught up in a European Union that I believe will have major restructuring and needs major restructuring if it's ever going to be competitive again with the rest of the world. Asia, China in particular, is the future. Ireland needs to understand that. Irishmen landing in Beijing, landing in Sao Paulo, landing in Bogota, landing in Hanoi, landing in Cairo, landing in Mumbai. That's where business is done. It's not done at the terminal at Dublin Airport that says Brussels, Germany, Paris. That's the change that you can make, and that's the message I would give to entrepreneurs. Think East.
Thank you very much, Michael. I think you're a leading example of what the Irish diaspora can do to reinvigorate ourselves as a nation and look at the talents that we have. Thank you for coming this evening, and I wish you every success in the years ahead.
Good to see you.